Good morning, everyone. So good to see all of you here this morning. Your smiling faces. Smell that good coffee too. Um, Before we get started on everyone's favorite topic of tax, I just wonder how many people have in the room have filed a tax return before. You okay? We do have some experience in the room. That's awesome. And how many have never filed a tax return before? Okay, you're a good company. So hopefully by the time we leave here today, we'll be a little more comfortable with the process. The US has a very different tax filing system than most countries. And this presentation is not meant to make you a tax expert. You don't have to remember every piece that we talk about today. And it's also not to be taken as individualized tax advice. So we do have experts that will walk you through the whole process. So let's jump in. When we're talking about filing taxes, one of the things that we refer to a lot is, are you resident or are you non-resident for tax purposes? This subject can cause a lot of confusion. For tax purposes, residency is not the same as immigration status. Your visa type alone is not going to determine your tax filing status. The IRS, when it looks at your tax residency status, is looking for how many days you have been present in the United States, physically present. The reason your tax residency status is so important is because everything else kind of hinges on this. The status is going to determine what forms you file, whether you're eligible for any tax-free benefits, what deductions you're eligible to take, what credits that you're not eligible for. So once we understand this, we can kind of move on in the process. When the IRS is determining your tax status, they're looking at two tests. The first one is very straightforward and easy. It's called the green card test. If you have a green card test, you are a resident for US tax purposes. You're not going to be using Glacier Tax Prep. You're going to file taxes just like a US citizen. The second test is the substantial presence test. It sounds complicated, but it's really pretty manageable once you break it down. The IRS looks at days physically present in the US. It counts all of the days that you are present in the current year. It counts 1/3 of the days that you were present last year and 1/6 of the days that you were present 2 years ago. If all of those days that you were present in the US equal 183 days or more, you are a resident for tax. You're going to be taxed as a US citizen. If it's less than that, you're non-resident for tax.
Are those cumulative? Can you just go back to that slide?
Yeah.
Is it added together? Sorry. The third and the 2/3 is added together to make into the 183?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. All of the days this year, 1/3 of last year, and 1/6 of 2 years ago. If all of those equal 183 or more, you're resident for tax.
And this is a calendar year from 1st of January to December?
Yes, it is a calendar year.
Oh, excuse me, may I ask a question?
But then we have exempt years. This is where F1 and J1 students are going to get a little bit special treatment, and so are J1 scholars and teachers. For J1s, you're going to have 5 calendar years that you are exempt from counting days of presence in the US. Those are your exempt years. For J1 scholars and teachers, it's going to be 2 years within 2 calendar years within the last 6 years. Being exempt from counting days present does not mean that you are exempt from paying taxes or that you're exempt from filing taxes. It means that you're exempt from counting days present.
And 1 day in the US equals 1 exempt year. So if you enter the US on December 31st, that is your first year.
Thank you for that, Amber. Did want to walk you through an example of the substantial presence test. For an F1 student, who arrived in the US in August of 2022, their first exempt year is going to be 2022. The second one will be 2023. The third one will be 2024. And the fourth one will be 2025. The fifth one is going to be 2026. So in 2027, this student is going to start counting days of presence in the US toward the substantial presence test. So around July the 3rd, they're going to become resident for US tax purposes, even though they're still in an F1 visa. You can still be in an F1 visa and be considered a non-resident for you or resident for US tax purposes. You can also be here on a work visa and still be a resident, a non-resident for US tax purposes, if that makes sense. So nothing really changed here. The visa status didn't change, only the tax residency status changed.
Just as a point of clarity, because I think it's helpful, when they're talking about it, your visa is strictly using the travel document. She's really meaning your F1 or J1 student status. And so whether you have a valid F or J visa, but she's really talking about, are you maintaining your F1 or J1 immigration status, less about your actual physical stay.
Thank you for that clarification. It's a very important piece. Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're on OTP, how does that work? Does that still classify under the same category as if you're on the F1 visa?
Correct. OPT is still a continuation of your F1 student status, so that would still be considered time where you were still in years where you're counting as exempt if you haven't hit your 5 years.
Thank you. The reason your residency status, tax residency status matters is because that is what determines which forms you're going to file and what rules apply to you. So different rules apply to non-residents versus residents for US tax purposes. If you're a non-resident, you're going to file Form 1040 NR. You're going to only be taxed on your US sourced income, and you're not going to be eligible for the standard deduction. And generally, you're going to be FICA exempt. If you're a resident for tax, you're going to file Form 1040. You're going to be taxed on your worldwide income. You are eligible for standard deductions, and you're generally FICA taxable. So we have to understand which category the IRS classifies us in before we can start talking about filing a tax return. So I've talked about two different statuses up to this point, but going forward, everything that we're going to be talking about is going to apply to non-residents for US tax purposes. And when I say resident or non-resident, I will always be talking about for tax purposes, not your immigration status like she was talking about.
What does FACA, does that mean?
FICA exempt. So in the US, we have what we refer to as FICA taxes. Those are OASDI and Medicare taxes. If you have a paycheck, you can see those withheld for US citizens and residents. If you're non-resident for tax, you're exempt from those being withheld from your paycheck or your taxable wages.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And we do say generally because there are exceptions to every IRS rule, generally. So there may be, something special for your circumstance, but the rule of thumb is FICA exempt on resident, FICA taxable resident.
So now we can talk about who must file a tax return. Non-residents who were physically present in the United States at any time during 2025, even if it was just for one day, in F, J, M, or Q status are required to file some type of tax form. Even if you did not work or earn income, a lot of people think, okay, I didn't work, I didn't earn anything, I don't have to file taxes. But filing a tax form does not always equal paying taxes, but you still just have to file the forms. This includes any dependents who are here with you. So if you have an F2 spouse, they would also need to file at least one form with the IRS. So when we talk about filing a tax return, what we're actually doing is reconciling two numbers. The amount that was actually withheld from your taxable payments and the amount that you actually owe. Is too much was withheld, you're going to receive a refund. If not enough was withheld, you'll owe additional tax. Both outcomes are possible and normal based on your situation. Each person's can look different. If you get a refund, that doesn't necessarily mean you did everything right. If you owe tax, that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. We're just reconciling those two numbers. That means that your tax calculation didn't exactly match what was withheld, and we just have to settle that up. There's a deadline for filing your tax return. I suggest you all go ahead and put it on your calendar now. It's April the 15th. If you file late, that can result in penalties, and if you're receiving a refund, it would substantially delay it. So we wouldn't want that to happen. So mark that on your calendar now if you can. In the US, we actually have two separate systems for filing taxes, not just one, there are two. There's one, the federal taxes, those are filed with the IRS. And then there are the state taxes, such as Arkansas or another state, whichever is applicable to you. And state residency rules may vary from federal tax residency rules, so that's something to watch out. You could be a non-resident for one and a resident for the other. So just pay close attention to those when you're filing. We get to talk about our wonderful software that we provide, Glacier Tax Prep. Commonly referred to as GTP. Glacier Tax Prep is a product of Arctic International. It's a secure, web-based, third-party software designed exclusively for non-resident federal tax return preparation. And the University of Arkansas provides it at no cost to our non-resident community to support you in filing your federal income tax return. GTP determines your residency status. It applies tax treaty benefits and prepares forms that you're going to need. It does not e-file. That's one thing that people all usually ask about, is if it's going to file electronically. You do have to actually print and sign and mail your forms when you're finished with GTP. Before you sit down and get started on the process, there's several forms that you're going to need. So I highly recommend that you go ahead and gather all of those up ahead of time. You're going to need your academic institution and host sponsor information, and we've already populated that information for all the FNJ status. You're going to need your passport, your I-20 or DS-2019, your social security number, your I-94 travel record. You're going to need any income statements that you receive, such as your W-2 or your 1042-S. You're going to need your addresses and your banking information. If you get a refund, you're going to have to enter banking information to receive a direct deposit. Yes.
If we don't work, how are we supposed to get our social security number?
You will not be eligible for the social security number if you're not working. If you're filing an income tax return and you had some sort of income, you'll file for an I-10, but I'm happy to discuss that with you afterward in the FAQ if you would like.
Okay, thank you.
Lauren?
Oh, I can see a lot of people taking pictures, which is great, but we're gonna send the slides to you if you signed up on HogSync. If you didn't sign up on HogSync, go see Hazel at the front desk and give her your email, and we'll send you the slide as well.
Thank you.
So can I just check, even if you haven't got an SSN or an ITIN, it's still okay to use the system, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And Glacier will prepare all the forms you need. If you need to file for an I-10, it's going to prepare the W-7 for you, and you'll submit that with your tax return. Yes,
So it gives you the I-10 number for you if you don't have the SSN.
it doesn't give the I-10 number to you, but it does prepare the form for you to apply for the I-10 and send that with your tax return. And then you'll receive the number afterward.
Okay, so you can file your taxes and file the I-10 number at the same time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, perfect.
The IRS actually issues the I-10. The social security number is that, once you're assigned a social security number, that's your number forever. Anytime, you're issued a social, that's your forever long. Even if you go outside of the US and you come back in 10 years from now, that's still going to be your SSN number. The I-10 is a little different because I-10s are only assigned when you need to use the tax system. So your I-10, once the IRS issues that, it's going to be good for about 5 calendar years. And then you may have to reapply, unlike the social. So that's why Glacier is going to only give you that form if you actually need to apply for the I-10. If you've got a social, that's your number. It's been assigned. It's going to be with you forever. So you don't need to apply for an I-10 at that point.
Somewhere in my app, I did receive a number. Is that my ITIN number? I've never filed a tax return, but I did receive some kind of number.
I would have to know where, so it's not a tax number.
Okay,
So the tax number is never gonna be in an app or gonna be emailed to you.
Right.
That's your number that's assigned to you. So we should keep it safe and secure, just like our I-20s and our DS 2019s. That's not a number we're gonna wanna share. They're just like, the IRS is never gonna call you or email you. They're not going to send electronically a taxpayer identification number. So that, anything that's in an app is likely not, that is definitely not that. But we can, I'm happy to look at it when we're done.
I took a photo of it, so yeah, I'll shoot it.
Thank you. The good news is that Glacier Tax Prep is actually going to walk you through this process step by step of filing your tax return. It's going to hold your hand every step of the way, screen by screen. Every page is going to have more information about the screen where you're entering information. It's going to do it. It's going to walk you right through it. If you've gathered up all the information that we just talked about, you won't have any trouble completing the process. Step one, you're going to enter your personal information, your name, your email, the information that you have on your person already. You're going to use the I-94 to enter your US entry and exit dates, your visa history, all of that will be entered. And by the end of the step, Glacier will have determined whether you are a resident or a non-resident for US tax purposes, and if you'll be using this software. If you're a resident, it'll tell you that you need to exit and use a different software. But if you're non-resident, you can just go to the next screen. And step two is where you're going to complete all your income statements that you've received. You'll enter any information that you have from a W-2 or a 1042-S. If you worked for UADA and UAF or another university in 2025 and you have a W-2 from another university and one from the University of Arkansas, you're going to enter all of those forms on the same tax return. You're only going to file one federal tax return. So same for 1042-S. If you have a 1042-S from another university and one from the University of Arkansas, enter both of those on this same return. And this step is where Glacier is going to review if you were eligible for a treaty. If you, for some reason, there was something that disqualified you from, if you are from a country that has a treaty and you weren't eligible for it, it will explain why. And it's going to provide a summary at the end of all of your income statements. Make sure that you look those over really carefully and that you entered all your information correctly before submitting. This is going to be the total of your income forms that you received. And if you didn't receive any income, this is a step where you're going to say, I did not receive any U.S. source income, and go into the next screen.
Excuse me. So both, it's always or, right? Or the either or between these two forms. Both contain all the information we need, right? If we do with W-2, we do a W-2 and it will have all the information.
If you have a W-2, it will have all the information you need for that. If you had a job where you earned wage or a stipend, you or graduate assistantship, and you received a scholarship that was exempt from or had tax withheld or was exempt from having tax withheld, you would have both forms. If you had a W-2 and you had you're from a country who had a treaty, then you would also, and part of your wages were exempt, you would also have 1042-S. There are individuals who would only have one or the other. You don't always have to have both. It depends on your situation. So, yes?
We have both, we have to like file both.
If you receive both, you have to report both. Did that answer your question?
And just to confirm, 1042-Ss were generated last week. So you should have already been contacted via email from online-tax.net, letting you know that you have a 1042-S available through your regular Glacier profile.
Yeah.
Can I ask what is the definition? And it seems like an obvious question, but of UK sourced income, what exactly is the definition of that? Is it something where you have to be physically working?
The definition of U.S. source income is very complicated.
Okay.
It depends on the income that you're receiving.
Right.
And if you're receiving a salary wage, so if you're working like, for example,
That's
if you're
obvious,
working
yeah.
at the university.
Yeah.
It's based on where you are physically doing the work. So if
Yeah.
you're physically doing the work in the United States, in the state of Arkansas, then it's reportable for you. It's US source income and it's also Arkansas income.
Yeah. What about if it's a dividend payment from overseas?
That is a special situation, and that would refer you to Glacier Tax Prep because they've got all those little special nuances that we're not
Okay.
as familiar with.
You? And step 3 is where you're going to confirm all of your additional information. It'll be a lot of personal information. Just answer the questions as honestly as you can. You'll see some questions about student loans and interest and prior year info. It's also going to want to know if you made any donations to a charitable organization. Just answer those the best you can as it applies to your situation. Your sponsoring institution information is going to be auto-filled for F&J status. If you're in a different status, you'll need to enter Sarah's information and our institution information, which has also been provided in the email you received. This is also where Glacier Tax Prep is going to calculate if you are due a refund or if you owe. There's another option. You could break even and not owe or get a refund. You're going to enter your banking information for direct deposit if you're receiving a refund. Paper checks are no longer allowed, so you do have to have a bank account if you're a US bank account if you're receiving a refund. And if you owe, Glacier is going to give you your payment options. In step 3, they're also going to ask about your dependent information. It's going to want to know about your marital status on the last day of 2025. A good reminder is that if you are married and your spouse is not with you in the US, you're still married. That doesn't change your filing status. You're still single or married, filing separately, but you're still married. They want to know this because they're going to prepare any of the dependent forms that you're going to need. I don't know if you remember I said earlier that even your dependents would need to file tax forms. This is where Glacier is going to generate anything that you need for them. So for each one that you select, whether it's a child or a spouse, it'll loop back through the process and create the forms that you need to file with the IRS for those dependents. Here's where we're going to finish it all up in step 4. We're going to first download, you'll get a zip file that's going to contain all your tax forms. It's also going to contain the instructions. Those are very important. Do not skip over those and just think, oh, I know how this works. Make sure you check off each one and follow each step so you don't have any problems down the road. You have to print your forms and then sign them in ink. They don't want a printed signature. A printed name. They want an actual signature. So if they're unsigned, the IRS is going to reject those, which is going to delay everything for you. You'll need to attach all of your income documents in the order that's listed in the instructions, and then mail to the IRS address that's provided. I highly recommend that you mail it by certified return receipt requested. This is proof that you completed the process and mailed it by the deadline, and that the IRS received it. If you don't get that back, you still have your receipt where you paid for it. You know, something went wrong in the mail and I need to track this down or resend it. You'll also want to save that along with all of the copies of your tax return and documents for at least 5 years. If the IRS comes back and has any questions, you have all that information available at your fingertips and you can tell them, hey, this is what I did. This is why I did what I did. This is where I mailed it. You did receive it. Lauren?
What was that called? That mailing option?
Certified mail with return receipt requested. So it just tracks it, and then once it gets there, it sends you a little green slip back that says we received this and someone signed for it. So you just hang on to that with your other documents. Refunds, just be advised that they can take up to 10 months. Once you mail your tax return, there's nothing to do but just wait patiently. GTP's not going to have any information about it until the IRS processes it. It just is a slow process and it can take a while. And we also won't be able to have any information. It's your personal information. You can log onto the website and check on the status of your refund, but you just have to wait. At the end of GTP, it will provide a link to the applicable state form. So if you're in Arkansas, you worked in Arkansas, it'll send you to Arkansas. If it's another state, it'll send you to that state. And you will have to complete, don't forget, it's two separate filing processes. So you do have to complete both obligations. And then final reminders are to file by by April the 15th. Get started early as you can. Just make sure that you're not on April 14th waiting on an answer from somebody and cause you to be late. So if you start now, it gives you time. If you need to ask questions, you can, or if you're missing a document, you can go and track that down. And you're going to include all income on one tax return. I talked about that. If you received a W-2 from us and a 1042 from us, 1042S from us, and another institution, both of those are going to go on one return. You're going to use GTP non-resident software, not a resident software. That's a lot of headache to straighten out after the fact. So make sure you use a non-resident software if you are indeed non-resident for US tax purposes. And if you're only filing Form 8843, you have until June 15th. It's a little bit later than this, April 15th. And then don't forget to keep all of your copies. Before I open the floor for other questions from you all, I did have a couple of questions that we receive a lot. The first one is, why do we recommend GTP? GTP was created for the complexity of non-resident tax filing, and we appreciate the university providing that so that everyone doesn't have confusion on their tax return. And GTP knows exactly what you're eligible to receive and what you're not eligible to receive. So this helps ensure that you don't claim credits that you're not eligible for, which can result in penalties and interest later. So if you claimed a credit you weren't eligible for, when the IRS figures that out down the road a few years, they're going to want that money plus interest back, and that's a headache. The second question we get is, how do I get assistance in GTP? At the top of every page in GTP, there is an FAQ that you can click on. And if you're an independent person and want to look up the answer right now, you can scroll through all of those questions. It's divided into like sections, and they have an extensive list. It's very helpful. So that's one place you can get help. And then as you're entering data, your data entry through each screen that you go through, on the right-hand side, there's always going to be more info. And it's going to be relevant to the page that you're entering the information on. You can check that out. Another way is to use there's a GTP tutorial video from the main menu that you can watch. And then the help link is another option for getting really specialized assistance. If you have a question about the question you had would apply, you could put that in the GTP help portal, and it will send over the information from your Glacier record to the GTP tax team. And so they will have a little bit of information about your situation already and your question, and they'll reply to you via email to the address on file in your Glacier record. It's another source of help. And then GTP also provides a Q&A session with live tax professionals, and the access information is available in the link in GTP. Do want to say, if you're joining one of these, make sure that you come prepared. The tax professionals that are hosting those are not going to prepare your income tax return for you. So you need to have already logged into GTP and looked at the process to see what questions you might have that you might want to have answered during that session. You'll need to join timely. That's another tip. But if you join and ask a question, you'll be asking it in chat. So you'll just drop your question in chat, and then the presenter will read your question aloud and answer it. Once you get your answer, you can hop off the call if you want, or you can stay and listen to other people's questions. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes you need to do something else. You don't have to stay for the entire time. So I think, did you have anything you wanted to add, Amber? I appreciate you coming today to support us.
Not yet. I'm done.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot in a short time, and hopefully you feel a little more confident and comfortable about starting your federal tax return for 2025. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take your questions.
So, if I'm a non-resident but I get income, like, am I supposed to pay the whole tax at once, or like, because you say I'm supposed to pay a certain percentage, I don't know how that works. Or can I pay it like on a different payments, like?
There will be a payment option, but it depends on your situation. So there's the possibility, did you receive a W-2,
And the other one,
a 1042-S?
yeah,
Okay. And did you have a treaty?
I don't even know what that.
A treaty, okay. So if you received a scholarship, hopefully the tax was already withheld from it. And then hopefully,
But if there's a, like an income, like,
So the scholarship is your income.
and if there's different, like more income,
So if there's
okay, more income.
you'll add all of those tax forms in step 2 of Glacier Tax Prep, and they'll look at the whole year situation, and so they calculate your whole tax liability, and at the end, it will tell you, because you may get a refund. You may owe. If you do owe, then there are some options available, such as a payment plan, but you also may get a refund. You just have to go through the steps. Each type of tax is calculated a little bit differently, and the IRS looks at your whole tax return, your whole income situation, not just this is scholarship, this is salary wage, this is a royalty. So you'll really just have to go through and let it calculate and do the tax return to see if you're gonna owe, because you may not owe, and hopefully you don't.
even if I get paid,
Even if you got paid, yeah, because you've been paying taxes, your scholarship was taxed.
yeah.
We had taxes coming out of your salary wage payments. I don't know what your other income situations are. We're happy to look at those offline. But, any income from the university is being taxed as the payments are being made.
Oh, I
So you've been paying taxes this whole time. It's just gonna see how much taxes have you paid depending on the liability that you have for the whole calendar year. So you may still get a refund.